Hey guys, welcome back to Ozy and the Pro. I'm TJ Laramie, UFC featherweight. I'm here with my co-host, Ozy Talks MMA, and today we're going to be going over the Dustin Poirier Conor McGregor fight. We're going to go over their past fight, some things that have changed since then, and what we think about this current fight and who's going to win. I'm going to pass it off to Ozy.
So these two met back in 2016 for the first time. In that fight, I mean, even before the fight started, there was a lot of pre-fight antics. Conor as usual, and I think he really got into Dustin Poirier's head. Something that may not be as big of a factor now, but really, the way that the first fight played out is that Conor took the center of the cage, and this fight was at 145. This current fight coming up will be at 155. But Conor really took the center of the cage, kind of waited for Poirier to come in and countered. He threw a lot of spinning kicks, but he really hit him. He really tagged him a few times in the first round, and the fight was eventually stopped by TKO. Conor won the first fight and in very convincing style, which is probably why he's favored to win this next fight in the odds.
Yeah, I believe, especially that last fight. The careers were so different at that point in their lives. Poirier was kind of like a back and forth fighter, win one, win two, lose one, lose two. Whereas McGregor was on his way to the title and eventually the lightweight belt too. So McGregor was at a point in his career where he was essentially unstoppable from anybody that stepped in his way at that time. But that brings us to what has happened since then and how these fighters have done since then. And I'll start with Poirier's last five opponents. We have Dan Hooker, we have Max Holloway, Khabib, Justin Gaethje, and Anthony Pettis. All guys that have fought for the belt, except for Dan Hooker. But Dan Hooker was just one contender fight away. Poirier was the one that essentially stopped Hooker from getting to the title shot. Hooker's has great wins too over guys like Gilbert Burns. He has a knockout win over Gilbert Burns. I really feel that the last five opponents do favor Poirier a bit. He boasts a 4-1 record. His only losses to the undefeated lightweight champion Khabib. So I really believe that Poirier, mentality-wise and career-wise, is in a different state and form than he was during their first fight. He really comes to fight every single time. You don't really see a mental weakness or a mental stray from the game plan or from the war. Dustin Poirier comes to fight. He comes to really 5-round fights too. These guys, Poirier's been in multiple 5-round bangers. So yeah, I'll let you go over Conor McGregor's last five, but for me, I feel like the last five really heavily favor Dustin Poirier on this one.
Yeah, just to add to that, man, he was in some wars. That last fight with Dan Hooker was insane. Like, I couldn't believe either of them were standing, right? So we know that he has that grit and he has more experience in wars, I would say, which leads to Conor's last five fights. So Conor's last fight was Donald Cerrone, which seemed to have lasted, I don't know, a couple of seconds. It wasn't that, it was maybe a little bit longer than that, but really quick fight. He may have through like 10 or 10 strikes or something. It was shoulder strikes. So it wasn't even really that much of a fight, I would say, unfortunately. And then before that was his loss to Khabib, which he really got dominated, right? Like everybody always says, Conor wasn't the best version of himself, but we know that every time somebody steps into a cage with Khabib, that you could say
it's been no different.
It's been no different. You see somebody like Gaethje, look like he's never fought before. Michael Johnson, Barboza, all these guys look like they've never fought before. It's crazy, right?
Poirier as well.
Absolutely. And then he has the win over Eddie Alvarez. I mean, I really, like TJ and I talk about this a lot, is like when you fight a fighter is really important. And he fought Alvarez, I think, towards the end of his career, at least, on his way down, right? Eddie Alvarez, the years before that was a stud. And I think personally that he was kind of on his way down at that time. And then he had the two fights with Nate Diaz, sorry. And so he lost the first fight. And then the second fight went to a decision. And that was a close fight. I mean, he didn't dominate him at all, right? Like it was a good fight, and Conor was amazing performance. It really showed off his boxing against somebody like Nate Diaz. But again, when we talk about the last 5 fights, and looking at the opposition, I would give that to Poirier. When we look at who's been in wars and who's had to like dig deep, that gives a different type of confidence to a fighter, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
all points to Poirier.
Especially look at Poirier. I think another 5-round fight people often overlook, and I even forgot about it until we started doing some digging for this video, was this 5-round with Holloway there. He absolutely
Oh
dominated the
yeah,
whole fight. He did everything but knock Holloway out, essentially. And
and
after
Holloway
Holloway's
is a
performance last
stud.
weekend, yeah, Holloway doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. So I think that really gives credit to Poirier, especially in this lead up to the next fight. So that brings us to the. We've already decided that we feel like Poirier probably has a better last 5 fights record. So let's break down this current fight though, because all that's in the past. You're only as good as your last fight, and so let's break down the striking. Personally, I feel like if we're talking about just overall technique and boxing technique, I'm gonna have to give it to McGregor for sure. He's a lot cleaner of a striker. He hits a little bit harder. He has a little bit more one punch power and accuracy. Not to take anything away from Dustin. The thing is though, I think Dustin gets hit a little bit too much. Whereas McGregor, he doesn't really when he does take damage, he's pretty good at weathering the storm a little bit. I mean, he's been stopped by Diaz. He got stopped by Khabib, but Khabib, he even lasted till the 4th round. I felt like uh, any other fight though against great strikers, he's always done very well against good strikers. The only thing that he has a hard time with are grapplers. So I feel like McGregor has a little bit of an edge. How about you?
So I think they're different styles. Like you look at Conor. Conor like kind of plays like the distance. He's a great counter striker, right? So it's a different style where like Poirier is just down to bang and with technique. So he'll throw like 3 or 4 punch combos, landing all of them, but doesn't have the same power, obviously. Like, and I think that even with the striking, and we're going to talk about cardio and all that, but I think in the first round, second round, especially if he gets to like go with the momentum he's comfortable with, I think Conor has an advantage. But when it comes to combos and kind of like fighting inside, like Poirier's unreal. Like his boxing is
Yeah,
amazing, and his kicks, and he's so fast. Like even he got off 1 or 2 combos in the first fight, and they're lightning quick. And the guy beat Max Holloway, right? Like his striking
yeah,
is unreal. I think they have like such different styles where you're right. Poirier is willing to take a hit and then take 2 hits and dish out 4 or 5 punch combo. But again, with the strength of Conor, that's dangerous. So different styles when it comes to striking, but I'm going to have to agree with you. I think Conor has a more dangerous style, especially in the first 2 rounds when it comes to striking.
yeah. 100%. I feel like the round number and the conditioning and tiredness is definitely going to play a factor as when it comes to the striking, when it comes to this whole fight. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Next, we go to the grappling. Dustin Poirier being a black belt, he was able to take Holloway down a couple times, and Holloway has one of the highest takedown defense ratings in all of UFC. So that being said, I believe that makes Holloway a little bit more of a danger for Conor McGregor. Holloway has shown to have great submission defense when he fought Anthony
Poirier?
Pettis. He got out of a few. Poirier has shown some very great submission defense himself, some very great knowledge on the ground, especially when he fought Anthony Pettis. Got out of a couple tight triangles there, was able to take Anthony's back, and Anthony being a black belt himself, I really feel like Poirier has shown his worth and his skill set on the ground. Whereas Conor, you don't really see too much of him on the ground. If he's ever on the ground, he usually hasn't been doing too well, unfortunately for him. Or if he has been on the ground on top of somebody, it's usually due to a strike or a knockdown, something like that. So it's really hard to say exactly how good Conor McGregor's grappling is, especially when you tee it up to somebody like a Diaz or a Khabib. But I feel that based on career and based on what I can go off of, I really feel like Poirier holds the advantage in the grappling department.
Yeah, and I think you're way more, I think, qualified to speak on the grappling of these guys. And obviously, we saw Poirier almost, get that guillotine on Habib. Although Habib would argue that he was relaxed in that moment, and that he wasn't in any real danger. But I think you talked about the important aspects of this takedown defense. Wouldn't it be something if Poirier tried to take Conor down the first round, right? Like, it's actually a very strategic and smart move. Gas Conor out a little bit, but I mean, we know that's not going to happen. I think, yeah, definitely giving the grappling to Poirier, but I think, like, in the clinch and in terms of like wrestling, like kind of getting people to the ground, I think Conor's pretty strong, so I don't see this fight really getting to the ground. Although I think it would be a good advantage to have, especially in the first round.
Yeah, I feel I feel that Poirier would be a little bit smarter if the fight were to go a little bit longer to start hitting those takedowns later in the fight, like he was able to get against Holloway. Um, Conor McGregor has great wrist control, great takedown defense, so it'll be tough to get him to the ground, but we'll see. So we both give the advantage to Poirier there. And then next, we got to go with conditioning and mental toughness. I put these in the same category because I feel like the two go hand in hand. You know what I mean? A lot of times, somebody might seem like they're great condition, but they could just be very, very mentally tough. Because the reality is, when you're fighting 5-round fights, everybody gets tired. It's who can dig a little bit deeper. So, as we were saying earlier in their last 5 fights, Poirier has been in at least 2 5-round wars with Holloway and Dan Hooker. He's also been put through the ringer with Khabib, and he had a war against Pettis as well. That every single fight Poirier has, he wins pretty convincingly, but he still goes the distance. He still goes the length. He still puts on a war, a beating. He can take a shot, give a shot. Whereas I feel McGregor is a little bit opposite of that. I feel like McGregor is somebody who likes to get things done quick, obviously, beating Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, beating Cerrone in less than a minute. Anytime he's had a longer fight, like with Khabib or Nate Diaz, he's had a little bit of a harder time. What do you think?
100%, 100%. I mean, you talked about the cardio, you hit the nail on the head. But I'll talk about the mental side of this. I think Poirier, like I said a little bit earlier, I think he's down to bang, and he's down to
Yeah.
these fighters talk about their willingness to die, and I feel like Poirier has that, and he's been there. Whereas Conor, I feel like is the type of guy who would tap sooner, the type of guy who doesn't like getting hit. And he shouldn't. Like, getting hit is not a great thing, right? It's not something I'm saying you should do, but I just feel like if the fight goes there, if the fight goes a distance, I think when it comes to like the mental fortitude, the mental toughness, and the cardio is a definite advantage to Poirier. Before we get into predictions, what about like overall, TJ? Like, what do you think about these fighters overall?
So overall, as an MMA game, when you're including the mental toughness, where they're at in their careers, based on like recency, I'm gonna play that card, recency bias. I'm gonna put some recency bias into this prediction. I feel like Poirier is the guy that has been showing up to fight. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but beating a cowboy who's on the downslope of his career, in my opinion, really isn't anything to be bragging about, seeing as in his last 2 fights he also got knocked out. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't anything impressive in the overall aspect of the division, I should say. Obviously, it's an impressive performance anytime you're able to beat Cowboy. But that being said, Poirier recently has been just having wars. You know what I mean? His fight with Dan Hooker is just, it was impressive, and Dan Hooker's looked pretty unstoppable in previous fights, being able to knock out Gilbert Burns, having another war with Paul Felder. Dan Hooker's no joke either, and Poirier was able to, in my opinion, Poirier won that fight pretty convincingly overall. Even though it was a war, I felt like Poirier won the majority of it. So Uh, I'm gonna have to say I think Poirier being at a different state in his career, I felt like mentality is what played a big factor in that first fight, their first fight. So I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna say Dustin Poirier by late round stoppage, probably third, fourth, or fifth round.
I like it. So I'm gonna agree with you, and I think one thing we mentioned earlier on is this fight's at 155, and
Yeah,
I think at 145, Poirier's chin wasn't there, but Dan Hooker hits hard, right?
yeah,
Like he took some. The fact that he didn't go down in that fight, I don't know if that's a good indication of what'll happen, or if, Conor's more precise maybe, but I don't think he's getting dusted in 60 seconds like we some of the BS that we're reading. I mean, maybe he does, and then you can't deny Conor. Like, really, if Conor wins this fight, nobody can say anything. Like, he beat one of the top fighters in the 155 division, right? With all that
yeah,
being said, for the reasons we've stated, just what Poirier's went through, how much he's developed his game, his chin at 155. He hasn't been. I mean, last time he got knocked out was what was it 2006? Either Michael Johnson or Connor, right? So I'm giving it
yeah.
to Poirier, and I know he's. I think he's the underdog in this fight too. Like, I know he might be. I don't even know what the rankings are at this moment, but I think betting wise, I think Connor's actually favored to win this fight.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think Connor's. I'm not sure if Connor's currently ranked at 155 because his fight with Cerrone was at 170. So, yeah, I'm not too sure about the rankings. Personally, I don't feel like rankings matter too much. We got a fight in front of us, a great fight to watch this Saturday, and I'm very excited. I'm sure everybody at home is very excited. So, I think we can both agree that. Or, do you agree that Poirier? You feel Poirier is going to take this one?
100. Oh, I didn't give my actual prediction. So yeah, I think Poirier is going to take it, but I think it's going to go to 5 round decision.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So you heard it here first from Ozzy and the Pro. I'm TJ Laramie. This is Ozzy Talks MMA. And thank you guys for tuning in. Like, subscribe, and please watch our next video.
See you next time. Take care.